Yeah, okay, good. So our talk tonight is going to be by Susan Redmond, who's at Princeton, about balloon-borne telescopes to the stratosphere beyond, and I'll give her a bit more of an introduction in a couple minutes. We'll then go on to some observation reports. Nikolai will run us through the sky this month. I've got a tiny bit of news, and then I would invite people who want to stick around, members, visitors, new members, to talk about stuff, talk about new equipment, or ask questions, to do so. And we do have a number of visitors, so I'll just mention a little bit about, well, I should introduce myself, I guess. I'm Mike Morrow. I'm the president of the St. John Center of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, and this is our monthly meeting, the third Wednesday of every month. Right now we're doing it by Zoom at 7:30, and the meetings are always open to the public, whether we're doing it in person or on Zoom. And if you want to get the links for future meetings, you can email us at info@stjohnsrsc.ca. And if you're not a member but you're thinking about it, I'll point out that there are lots of, we certainly welcome visitors to our meetings, but if you become a member, you become part of a supportive community that wants to help you learn about astronomy and is eager to do so. We have a member chat group where people share observations, but also discussions and alerts about interesting things happening in the sky. There are some publications that come from the RASC, Sky News, monthly magazine, with things that are in the sky that month and some really interesting articles. A great magazine, a journal, which is a little bit more academically inclined, but still very readable. The Observer's Handbook, which is really has a wealth of information. As a member, you've also got access to equipment that we can rent out. We've got 7 telescopes, a solar telescope, various accessories, very reasonable. $5, $10. I guess it's about $10 a month for most things. And when things are a little more normal, we have member observing sessions. So you can join by going to the RASC, the national RASC site, and navigating from there. And members should be getting, there is a newsletter, a weekly newsletter, and a monthly bulletin, which keeps you up to date with things that are happening in the sky and things that are happening with the organization. And if you aren't getting these, you can let us know. You can get in touch with Randy, who's the secretary, and do that through the info@stjohnsrsc.ca. So with that, I'd like to get ready to, or like to introduce our speaker for tonight, who's Susan Redmond from Princeton, who's going to talk about balloon-borne telescopes to the stratosphere and beyond. And so Susan's in the 4th year of her graduate studies in the William Jones Laboratory and the High Contrast Imaging Laboratory at Princeton University. She works on the optical and thermal systems for the super pressure balloon-borne imaging telescope, Super BIT, which studies galaxy weak legacy, and she'll, I'm sure, tell us about what that is. She also works on some other techniques here, which I won't go into detail here. And she also frequently collaborates with the Russell B. McAdon Optics Laboratory at the Space Telescope Science Institute. And there she works on the high contrast imager for complex aperture telescopes test bed. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and invite Susan to start sharing, and we'll keep everybody's microphones muted. So are you ready to go, Susan?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will mute myself and take.
And so, I want to keep this relatively informal. So if you have any questions throughout it, maybe Mike, you can just let me know if anyone raises their hand, or you can just unmute yourself and ask.
And so I'd like to thank you again, and I'm sure everybody will, I invite everybody to unmute and make some noise to thank Susan, and good luck with your research. I think it's really exciting stuff, and that's I can't think of anything, but it certainly looks challenging. But I'm sure it's very satisfying too to be working on a project like that. So thank you very much again. Good luck. So I'm going to go on now. We'll do the observation report. So I'm going to share my screen again, and let me rearrange my stuff here. So you can see the screen now, member observations. And so I've taken some observations that people have posted on the RASC NL talk site, but if anybody wants to jump in with any reports on visual observations at the end, just let us know in the chat. So I'll invite people to say a little bit about their observations as we go along, and I'm going to start with a couple that I did. You'll see that in the last month, there have really only been a couple of days when people could do very much. So you'll see that all the observations are clustered. So we've got a bunch on February 2nd and I think February 10th maybe. So February 2nd was very nice, and I tried the Flame Nebula, and there's the Horsehead Nebula, but you can barely see it. So this is at the end of the Orion's belt, and a favorite, the double cluster. I'll invite Chris to say something about this one. That was the same night. And so Chris, if you want to unmute and say a bit about what we're seeing here, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, well, certainly the most obvious thing in the frame is what seems to be a really, really bright star. That's Mu Orionis, or 61 Orionis, and it's a bright star in the constellation of Orion. It's just up the arm, just up from the shoulder of Betelgeuse, and so it's a significantly bright star. And there's a planetary nebula only about half an arc minute away from that star, and it eluded discovery all the way up until 1955, when George Abell discovered it as part of the Palomar Sky Survey and saw it on plates. And you can only see this thing photographically, really, because the starlight is so overwhelmingly bright. Normally, you need to use narrowband filters that isolate the light from nebulae and depress the light from the star, which is a continuous rainbow. I just didn't have much time. I just pointed the telescope. It had a planetary imaging camera. I've taken pictures of Jupiter a month earlier, and I just pointed it at it and crossed my fingers and took a whack of 1 minute exposures guided, and yeah, it worked. The challenge with this one is to see it visually. It's certainly an easy star to find with a small telescope. If you use an O3 filter, you might see it visually.
Okay.
So I'm pleased with that. That worked out.
Yep. And you were mentioning about you can actually see the remnant of the star from the planetary nebula in the middle.
Yeah, right in the middle. There's a very faint white dot. All planetary nebulae are white dwarfs that used to be sun-like stars that die and they throw off a shell of their material. When the rest of the star shrinks to be a very hot ember, it emits lots of UV light, and that shell of gas glows. And that's a planetary nebula. They don't last long, only about tens of thousands of years.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
And you want to say just a little bit about this one?
Same evening, immediately afterwards, Orion was still up. Nikolai, our observing chair, had a challenge, try and observe the trapezium. So took a whole whack of half-second exposures, and half-second is short enough to not oversaturate the trapezium stars. stack them up, and I think you can see the separate stars in the trapezium there.
Bing, 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 bing. Okay, and
And
this
before
is another
going-
one from that night.
Yeah, before going to bed after completely freezing my legs to sleep, because I sit cross-legged in my little observatory behind the telescope. Gemini was up, and we don't want to use the old-fashioned name for it. It's also called the Line Nebula, and I forget the NGC number, unfortunately. But anyway, another planetary nebula, and just pointed the same thing at this and took a bunch of 4-second exposures. It's a little fainter, and that seemed to work as well.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. And Robert, are you there, Robert?
Yes.
So you want to say a little bit about your M42? Same night again.
Yeah.
We're going to have a whole whack the same night.
Was that, I didn't catch your,
Oh, the same night, still February 2nd.
yeah, chilly. Chilly night, but if you dress right, you can do it. I don't know if I do it out there tonight or last night, excuse me, but anyway, that was more or less a test shot, my first image of the night. And so it's an easy pick. So it's nothing extra, you know, it's just our probably arguably the biggest or easiest deep sky object that we have at our disposal. Probably a poor word to use, but beautiful nonetheless.
Yep, beautiful, beautiful colors. There's the Running Man Nebula there, I guess.
Yeah. And I think this was yes, the 12 20-second exposures. Yeah. And I didn't use a filter that night at all. I forgot to put it in line, and it was so cold that once I got it all working, I didn't want to go back. I didn't know if I could go back and actually fiddle with a filter. So I just let it be, and it turned out okay, even though it was bright moonlight.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Robert. And Jim also has an image of M42, the Orion Nebula. You want to say a few words about this, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
And same night.
Yeah, that was, I remember from Robert's comment there, it was a very, very cold night. I got there, I got set up in Pleasantville just after dark, and I was only able to withstand the cold for a couple hours. So this is a 60 minutes of exposure, and this was taken with the with my legacy 500mm telephoto lens and camera setup. This was guided, and I'm using a narrowband and optolong filter called the enhanced filter, which is H alpha, H beta, and O3. And what I was looking for here was the evidence of dust in between the bright parts of the nebula. This is probably the first time I've seen the hints of the tremendously dusty and dirty environment in which the most of the stars in our galaxy inhabit. So these are, the Orion Nebula is a very famous star-forming region. So, and we saw the trapezium in Chris's photo. But this is one of these old lenses that I've been taking doing astrophotography with. So, yeah, so it's you can actually use old equipment to get some beautiful pictures from them.
Great. Okay, thanks a lot, Jim. And is Sue Hart here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Not much to say about this in sense it's nothing technical. I just happened to be in my kitchen on this particular evening and admiring the scenery, lovely sunset. And then I realized there was this lovely juxtaposition of Jupiter and the moon, the crescent moon. Now, I mean, it doesn't really do it justice, obviously, to the native eye. It was just beautiful. And at the time, I didn't have a proper camera. I had my cell phone, so I ran down to the deck, tried to take a shot outside, but everything was, the cables were in the way. So I went back up to the kitchen and I thought, well, you know what, I'll have a try. And I just took this shot through the kitchen window. Didn't think much of it, and I hardly dared to post it. But actually, if you zoom in, you can see, I think, what you guys called earth shine in the end, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I found quite interesting about it to the native eye as well. I mean, you could actually see the image of the whole moon, the sphere of the moon, as well as the crescent, which was very bright. And of course, looked much bigger to, you know, when you were looking at it through the window. Anyway, that's probably all I have to say. But yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize that juxtaposition was happening. I didn't have my RASC calendar at the time, so I hadn't been alerted. So I rushed down to find Sky News and then realized exactly what I was seeing there. But yeah, it was a beautiful night.
Yep. Yeah, very nice shot, and it sort of captures that evening. And it's impressive. Oftentimes with a you know, a cell phone picture of the moon, you don't get the nice sharp bits on the crescent. You caught that, you know, it's very nicely focused. So
well, you know, I tried to open the window, but I couldn't get it open wide enough, so I thought I'll just have to take it through the glass. So I mean, it was definitely a very low tech.
yeah, still great. Thanks a lot,
Very
Sue.
impressive.
And Randy, you want to say a word about your Venus?
Sure. Couldn't
So this now is a
couple
few
days
days
later.
after that
Yeah.
night. So we're up to February 7th.
Venus was getting close to its brightest. I didn't want to take a chance to wait, so I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there it was. You couldn't miss it, and I happened to have a good view from my driveway. So, but it moves very quickly, so it's tough to get a you know, a single shot of it. But you can, again, as Sue said, if you zoom in, you can see a little bit of the movement. It's not a perfectly you know, crisp image. So, but it was -22 at the time. So
Yeah, you get points for that.
yeah.
Very nice, thanks.
And
And
then, same
you
day.
won with this
Yeah.
prominence. So
There's a few more up on the top as well. I could have merged it with a surface shot, I guess, is what you see a lot of times, but I wanted to get that huge big flare prominence on the side there. And from what I hear, there's a huge big explosion on the backside of the sun, which should be coming around soon as well. So who knows, we may get that kind of stuff again, right?
yeah, that's pretty impressive. And you can see some sunspots on it.
The problem with most of these solar scopes is you have to tune them for what you want to see, the prominences or the surface, and
Yeah.
it's very tough to get both into one picture.
Yep, very nice. And so this was a couple days later. This was using my solar scope, and I, in this case, I did tune for the surface, but I don't think there were many prominences that day anyways. So there's some of the sunspots, and another one over there, and some other stuff. So you can see the texture. And Robert, the same day. So they're sort of upside down from each other. So these sunspots are these ones on Robert's, and so I was using an H alpha filter, or a telescope with a built-in H alpha filter. So it only sees the red light from a transition in hydrogen. And Robert was using a white light filter, sort of a luminized mylar, I guess. And I did the same thing. So those are basically the same shot, but this was a single shot that Robert took, and I took 25 fairly quick shots, 1/250, 1/250th of a second, and stack them. And so it's, you can see some a little more depth along the terminator. And the same night, the clouds were starting to come in, and I managed to get 2.5 minutes on Andromeda before it. Oh, we lost Robert. Now he's coming back in. So I'll wait for Robert to get established, and then we'll let him talk about this one. You there now, Robert?
Yes, hello.
Well, we went through your white light sun and your moon. You want to say anything about, and then I talked about my moon. Do you want to jump in with anything about those two, and then we've got your M81 and M82 next. Let me read Amy's question. I'm assuming it's best to know the points of the constellations to view majesties other than the moon. I have applications to do so, and I wonder if that's the way to go about it. And yeah, the answer is for sure. You really want to start out. You don't need to know all the constellations and all the stars. You want to sort of learn the sort of prominent constellations, and in the winter in the south it's Orion, and in the north for me Cassiopeia and Ursa Major, which is the Big Dipper, is part of that. They're always visible in the north. Auriga is a bright constellation. In the summer there's Cygnus and Leo. And by knowing just really, there are 88 constellations, but we can only see about half of them because the other half would be in the south. So we don't need to know, or you don't need to start by knowing 44 constellations. I think knowing a couple winter constellations, a couple summer constellations, that's the beginning to start looking for some of these other things like galaxies and nebulae. And there are some of these things that in a very dark sky, you can actually see with your naked eye, and you can see much more with just binoculars are good enough. The Andromeda galaxy, you can see as sort of a faint smudge in a dark sky. The double cluster, the Orion Nebula, if you look tonight, if it's nice and clear and you don't freeze, it's the belt of Orion is sort of 3 stars lined up very nicely. And then the Orion Nebula, if you look down below that, it's like the sword of Orion. And you can see that in the middle of that sword, there's something a little fuzzy. And that's the Orion Nebula that we've been seeing here. So yeah, knowing a little bit about where the constellations are is the first step. And then, Robert, are you back yet?
Yes, I hope.
There you are. You want to say a bit about your M81, M82?
Yeah, well, I think, it shows their 20-second exposures, which is not a lot of time spent on it. And perhaps because I didn't use the filter, with no filtering, there's a lot of sky fog. And you can also, of course, see dust spots on my images. But anyway, M81, M82 are two galaxies that are optically fairly close together in the sky. I guess if you held up your finger against the sky, your finger would span an awful lot more than the distance that optically these two galaxies are in the sky. So they're very close together in the sky. Just happenstance, of course. One is a grand spiral, M82, that'll be on the right, and M81 is the cigar galaxy, but unfortunately in this image it's not showing the effluent that's coming from the supermassive black hole in the center of that galaxy spewing.
That's a little bit there, but
Yeah, a little bit there, not much. But I don't want to say too much more about them. I like galaxies. They're one of my favorite targets, and there it is.
yep, and nice spiral structure there. And Chris says 10 by 50 binoculars, Dickinson's Night Watch. Oh, so this is sort of an answer for Amy's question. 10 by 50 binoculars, Dickinson's Night Watch, and maybe dark rural skies will show several galaxies as faint fuzzies. A telescope's needed to see things like Robert's image, but binoculars will hint at them. That's correct. And the RASC actually has a star finder, which is just a paper wheel like this, and there's much more sophisticated ways to find things now. But the interesting thing with this one is that it does mark some of the things that you can see with binoculars with little yellow circles. And there's only about 8 or 9 of them on there. And that would be a good start. You know, you can see some of them in the summer, some in the winter. But there are things like the double cluster, the coat hanger cluster, the great cluster in Hercules. And so if you're getting started, you know, a list of things like that, or a list of things in the in Night Watch, sort of the easier to find things, or there are some books about binocular observing. That's a good way to get started. And just because it's listed in a binocular book doesn't mean that you can't look at it with a telescope, but the fact that it's in a binocular book means that it's going to be big enough and bright enough that it's a little bit easier to find.
Don't forget that on our in our website we have listings there of 10 best telescopic and 10 best binocular objects that are associated to the particular months of the year that, you know, makes them highest in the sky. So that's another avenue for, you know, but it's only a list.
So I'm going to stop sharing and invite Nikolai to share his screen.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
So you want to share your screen and, oh,
Yep.
You should be able to do it. There you
Okay.
are.
Can you see it now?
Yep, got it.
Okay. All right. So
And Nikolai's our observing director. So he's going to
Yes,
run us through the
hello.
sky this month.
Yep. So this is a document that I update every month and post it on the website, as Robert mentioned. So this lists everything that's observable in this area in St. John's from now through the next monthly meeting. So I just got to upload this last minute. Apologies, Greg, who had been patient enough to wait for me to upload it at 7:30. So hopefully there aren't any massive errors here, but starting off with the solar system roundup. So this is valid for today, and you can interpolate, you know, into the future or go to the links below to see, you know, other dates. So I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable, so let me know if I start breaking up or something. So sunrise is at 7:04, sunset is at 5:25. So as you can see, we've gained more than an hour since the winter solstice. So we've, you know, the day's getting longer slowly. So that's as much as I'm going to say about this. Then moving on to planets. Those are the rise and the set times for the planets. as well as when they cross the meridian, which is their highest point. Again, this is for today. And then there's a picture of the sun from today also. Quite a few sunspot groupings, at least 5. So the sun continues to be active, as we've had it for the past couple of months. No changes there. In terms of planets, we have in the evening sky just Uranus. Early in the evening it's visible, but it is a difficult target because it's faint and because it's visible kind of just after sunset. The morning is substantially more active, with Mars, Saturn, and Mercury visible. So Venus will be a bright morning star over the next little while, reaching the highest altitude on February 23rd. So that's not the date of the greatest elongation. That's just the date when it's highest in our sky. Actually, the greatest elongation, I think, going to occur sometime in March. But this will be the best time to observe it. The highest or the farthest away from the sun from our perspective. But pretty well positioned for a while. And then there's Mars, which is visible in the morning sky, rising 2 to 3 hours before the sun, slowly brightening. What did I do? Slowly brightening through this year as it works through its December 2022 opposition, but for now it remains too faint and small to observe. With much detail, you can still see it. Saturn just recently underwent solar conjunction 2 weeks ago, meaning it's slowly re-emerging into the morning sky and visible just before sunrise. And then there's Mercury. It is in the morning sky into the first few days of March, but the apparition is quite unfavorable, so it's kind of difficult to see, let alone to see much on it, which in general is a challenge. So that's it for planets. There's no Jupiter or Neptune, which are hidden in the glare of the sun for the next month or so. Here's a list of the brightest comets. Nothing spectacular that I know of, at least according to this source. I know there's always other sources that may list, especially emerging comets that haven't made it to this website, which is in thesky.org. If I've missed something, please let me know. Asteroids, same thing. These are the 5 brightest asteroids from St. John's and supernovae, where currently the brightest one is magnitude 9, which isn't terrible. Better than what we've had for the last couple of months. Meteor showers, there's nothing right now. Last one was on January 4th. Next one is in April. At least from the big ones. And then there's the top 10 deep sky objects that Robert was talking about. So this is the list for February. This is the list for March. There's lists for telescope and for binoculars. There is some overlap, but you'll see as we go into March, Beehive cluster, Bode's Galaxy, M81 and M82. Those are the objects that are nice and high and well positioned for observing. So that's that. Oh, here we go. Here is our February observing challenge, and it's member's choice. So what I'm gonna do here is, I rarely get feedback for the observing challenges that I pick. So I'm gonna hand it over to everyone on this call and come up with an observing challenge that everyone, or at least someone, suggests, and other people like. So I'll do that every now and then, especially when I run out of ideas, but I will pass it on to, or get an open table discussion in. Does anybody have a fun observing challenge for the next?
I think just observing something in the next month might be a challenge, but it certainly was in the last month, but staying warm while you're observing. Anyway, so I don't hear any anybody jumping up with a challenge, but now that we know you're going to do that once in a while, maybe we can keep that in the back of our minds.
Right on. Well, why don't you think of something and email me? And the moon?
It's
Okay.
right where the light standard should be. That was this time last month, right? It just
Okay.
came up underneath the light standard. You can just see it, right?
Yeah.
All
And
right.
Gary suggested seeing M. So Marcella said 8 clear nights in a row. Good luck. And Gary said M82 and M81 with naked eye.
Oof.
I don't
Okay.
think I can. I don't think so. But I hope that's not a serious suggestion. But
Yeah.
if Gary can do it, a picture of the last quarter moon. That's actually
Yeah.
that's not a hard challenge, but it might be.
I like that. Let's say a picture of the moon in one of its 4 primary phases, but it needs to be, one of the 4 phases,
Okay.
full moon. Well, you can't picture new moon. Well, I mean, you can, but then
Yeah.
prove it.
In 24.
So full moon, first quarter or third quarter. Mercury would be very challenging. Definitely encourage you to try it with this apparition.
Or
Okay,
just
so
observe it and report that you saw it.
Okay, yeah, so lots of ideas. So what I'll do is I'll update this and add one of those challenges.
Okay, good.
Alrighty. I have
Okay,
a
so
very fun one for next month. Can't wait to share it.
Oh,
So here's the International Space Station passes. There's nothing right now. They resume on March 9th. Observing sessions, there's currently none. However, I just heard today that all measures are being lifted in a month. So we'll see if that means anything for us. We'll surely be reevaluating. But yeah, this is your observing calendar for February and March. So that's it for me.
great. Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Nikolai. That next month, March 16th, Chris Stevenson's going to talk about the Fermi bubbles, which you may or may not have heard about. But it's sort of interesting. We sort of think of our galaxy as having been well behaved for a long time. And Chris, I guess it'd be fair to say that the Fermi bubbles suggest that maybe the galaxy hasn't been quite as well behaved in recent times as we think. Is that be a fair hint at what you're going to talk about?
Indeed. More to come.
Yep. Okay. So I'm looking forward to that. And so I'd invite people then, if there are some visitors and some new members, if you've got some, so I'm going to stop sharing now so we can all see each other. And if you've got some questions about your stuff or questions about anything to do with what we've, to do with astronomy, then I'd invite you to unmute yourself and make yourself visible on the camera and wave your hands and ask some questions, and we'll chat for a little bit, and then maybe go outside if it's still clear, if you can stand the cold. If you do go outside,
I just thought I'd say, this is Sue here. I sent an email to that link in the RASC newsletter to say I hadn't had the calendar or the observer handbook, and I got them within about a week.
Wow.
So, you know, it's a good idea to do that. Sorry, the strange camera angle. I've got two screens on the go here.
Yeah.
That's
But anyway, it worked well. I got a
Yeah,
reply and it
Jamie
appeared
here.
in my mailbox about a week later.
Jamie, were you saying something?
Yeah, Jamie here. I had the same experience as Sue. I used the link that was in the President's newsletter, and within about 3 days, I
Did you
got
get
my
any-
handbook.
Did you get any reply from the national office when you read them?
Yes, yeah, they
Wow.
did, yeah.
They're not replying to any of my email. I must be
I'll forward you what I got from them, Randy.
I must be on their bad list.
okay. So Keith, maybe that's, I'm sorry that there's still holdups. I thought that maybe the dam had burst a couple weeks ago and that things were sorted out, but maybe that link in the newsletter, which I guess would be a couple weeks back now, that might be the thing to try. And the paper copy, I enjoy having that anyways. It's
Randy, I just went back and checked my email, and the President's newsletter was on the 27th of January,
Okay.
and they responded to me on February 3rd.
So
yeah, so I guess Keith, if you need that, if you don't still have that newsletter, you could contact Randy at the info, and he could probably forward that email to you.
Sure, yeah, no, I have all the newsletters. I keep them in a temporary file for the year at least.
Okay,
So no problem. Thanks.
good. Thanks a lot. So if there's nothing else, maybe we should wrap it up. And
if they're lifting COVID restrictions in a month, I'm not entirely sure of the wisdom there. I think there's more. Exactly 2 years. Yeah, well, I think there's something in that. I'm going to be cautious for a little while after that, but eventually, maybe we'll be getting together for in-person observing sessions again.
mhm.
yeah. I
Dare
hope
we
so.
say Signal Hill again?
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe in May or June?
there's an astronomy day coming up, what, April or May, isn't it? So
Yeah, that should be a possibility
Mhm.
Yeah,
if everything stays well behaved.
yes.
well,
Can I just say one thing? I know we're all, well, some of us are waiting to go out and observe, but I think some of you on the site know that I've just bought some new equipment. I bought a new camera and a new telescope is on its way. And I have to say that, not being technical at all, I really would appreciate some help down the line. So if we can do some actual observing sessions, that would be great for me to just help in, I don't know, just getting it set up. And even the camera, it took me about an hour to actually figure out what all the different working parts were. So I'm a long way from taking any really lovely shots. But anyway, there you go.
Yep,
But yeah,
so as you get things, as you
Sorry.
get your stuff, let us know and, post questions, and when we can get together. we'll
Okay.
Try and do something like that too, because that's a good thing to do.
I would
Sue,
I'd really appreciate that. That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah.
Sue, rather than spending a fortune on an observatory for your deck, I would suggest just putting a pier out there so you don't have to fiddle with a tripod, something that's
What's-
mounted right to the ground.
I'm not sure what
Just a post coming right up
Yeah.
from the ground.
Okay,
Or-
yeah, no, I've sort of changed my mind a bit. Well, I'm reconsidering building an observatory or getting one, because I just thought it was a really expensive thing to do.
Yes.
And all the weather we've had recently, is this a blip or is it going to be, so I may
That's
end
why I
up
suggest just
spending
getting a
money.
pier so you don't have to put out your
Yeah,
tripod ever.
okay.
and you
Yeah.
just,
Just like
So
a
this-
pole coming right from the ground up through your deck.
Well, that's what I want, really. I don't want to have to keep moving it in and out and realigning it and everything. So that would be great. But there'd be no shelter, though, would there, with that? I guess you
No,
could.
no.
No.
That would, you wouldn't be leaving your telescope out. I think you said you got an X-Star 8
Oh, I
SE.
see.
I don't think you'd want to leave that out even in an observatory with all the electronics.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I don't know any of those.
Okay, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm going to give up on the banter and go out for a gawk.
A gawk.
Yes.
See you all later. It was a good
Okay.
talk, Susan. Although
Yeah,
she's
good-
All
gone.
right,
good
great
meeting. Thanks,
talk.
everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks for arranging it.
Cheers.
Bye.
Take care.
Don't freeze.
No.